So I'm going to install new stainless steel pushrod tubes in this 1983 R100RS. And I got a set of those from Moto Electrics. Now, to install them, you have to heat the cylinder up to about 250 degrees and then drive the tube into these holes. And it's helpful if you can chill the tube, but because it's such a thin wall, it doesn't stay cold very long unless you can somehow figure out a way to keep it chilled. And what I like to do is use some paper towel as a plug and fold that over and then roll it up and stick it into the tube. And then I can soak that with water and freeze it, and it becomes a plug. And then when it's gotten frozen, I'll add more water back into the void back here. So this becomes a nice cold reservoir and will help keep this chilled while I drive the tube. To make sure that the tube will slide easily, I want to sand the very edge here. Now these actually have been chamfered, but there's still a slightly sharp edge. So I use some 600 grit and get that sharp edge taken off. So I soak the paper towel with water and then stand the tubes up to freeze the paper towel so it'll be a plug. To drive the tubes in, I'm going to use a mandrel that I got that's made by Siebenrock. I happened to pick this up from Moto Electrics, which resells them. And the way this works is it's got a machined end that will fit into the collar end of the pushrod tube, and it fits flush with the edge. So you can use a hammer to pound on the mandrel and drive that tube into the hole in the cylinder. To drive the mandrel in, I'm going to use a fairly hefty couple-pound maul, because you do have to hit it pretty hard. And then if I get down close and I need just some final small adjustments, I'll use a smaller hammer. When I install the new pushrod tube, there's a measurement I need to make, and it's between the top of the flange at the base of the cylinder and the top of the collar of the pushrod tube. And what I need is a gap between them that's 1.7 to 1.8 millimeters. I found popsicle sticks, although their thickness vary. If you measure a couple, you'll find one that's right in that range. And what I do is I put the stick even with the top edge of the flange, and then the collar should just touch the bottom of the stick. Now, to take that measurement, I use a machinist flat and lay it on the flange, and then I can slide the stick along the bottom, and it's not so hard to make a square measurement. Now, the reason for that distance is that if the tube pushes in too far, it'll split the pushrod tube seal, and if it's too far back, then there's not enough pressure to keep the seal and you'll get oil leaks. But that 1.7 to 1.8 is right in the sweet spot. Okay, I have the hot cylinder and I have the cold tube, and I'm going to put a little red thread locker on the tube. Kind of coat the back half of the tube because it'll be where I want the seal. Then I'm going to insert the mandrel into the tube and then insert the tube into the hole. And see how I'm doing. I'm actually pretty close. Just a little tap. Check with my popsicle stick. No, need a little bit more. No, just a touch more. Yep, that's going to do it. So the first tube is installed. Okay, I put it back in the oven for about 10 minutes to get it warm again. Ready to put the second tube on. Get a little bit of our thread locker on here. And then, very much as we did before, put the mandrel in the tube, put the tube in the hole, get it lined up. Yeah, a little bit more. Well, see what the popsicle stick says. No, need a little bit more. Okay, that's just about there. Yep, that's going to work. By the way, if you end up driving this just a little too far, what you can do is flip the cylinder over and insert your mandrel and drive it back just a little bit. Now, the other thing I like to do just to keep the collars from going anywhere is I put just a little bit of the red Loctite right here on the flange, so that'll help lock it in place. So I'm going to install the head studs that fit into the cylinder. There's 4 of them, and of course 2 for each cylinder, and they go in this little hole. Now the depth on this one is what I want to set them to. I just installed this one, but it's going to be about 28 millimeters proud, and I'm using red Loctite, which is the strong stuff, and coat the threads pretty liberally with that. And then I just thread the stud into the hole. And I get a little extra here. I'll just dry that up. I don't want to leave any of that here on this mating surface because that's where the head gasket's going to go. Let's clean that up. And make sure my caliper is set to 28. And see where we are. Still a little high. There we go. So I'll do that on the other cylinder, and they'll be back together again.